Sustainability, a challenge to the current urban environments. An environmental movement is on the rise and is starting to have a more and more prominent role in our social and political decisions. This movement is being caused by the amount of information being revealed on climate change. As more and more of this information is being revealed, more people agree that more should be done to ward off the havoc that climate change will cause if left untouched. However, an unknown pathogen that contributes a lot to climate change is the current urban environments that we live in. These urban environments emit greenhouse gases that trap in heat, which speed up the Earth's heating, but they don't only do that. They also pollute the air and the water that we need to survive, while also tearing up habitats of animals and plants. In Julia Watson's quote, she says, "Too often, when we are faced with a crisis, we build walls of defense. These are all used to build a fortress against nature." And this is absolutely correct, as most of the materials that we use, being concrete and glass, often build a fortress against nature. However, once we abolish these current urban environments, the question is, what would be the natural next step? I argue that the natural next step should be making our cities sustainable and drawing from capitalism. There are a great number of benefits that come with sustainable cities, such as the fact that they're actually more economically sound than the cities that we currently live in because the materials last longer. As well, these cities are a great way to foster our ethical concerns for nature. Cities should become more sustainable because all urban environments are detrimental to all living things. There are a multitude of positive benefits that come with making cities sustainable, and it fulfills our ethical concern and is the best way to care for nature, a duty of humanity. The detriment of the current urban environments. Most cities are built in a way that is detrimental to the health of all living things. For example, there is a loss of biodiversity in the ways in which the cities tear up habitats and in similar niche they both create. Going back to the point with the niche, it is noted how all cities are similar and cause animals to evolve similarly. This is explicated on by Eric Bender, who is an associate director at Whitehead Institute, who notes how the white-footed mouse, as seen on the left, have evolved similarly and have developed the same skulls over time. As well, there's a ton of habitat loss, as a lot of land is needed to build the current urban environments, and this also results in less biodiversity, as pointed out by UC Berkeley. UC Berkeley also says that urbanization also results in deforestation and the extraction of fresh water as well. However, there are not only downsides for plants and animals, but there are also downsides for humanity. For example, these cities mainly rely on fossil fuels, and they emit tons of greenhouse gases, which can poison the air, making it hard to breathe and even survive. However, there's a not well-known mental cost of living in urban cities, as it cloisters people from nature. This is also exploited on by Joan Screed and Ben Andersons, sociologists with PhDs, who says that it, meaning the current urban environments that we live in, can evoke emotions like insecurity, fear, anger, and sadness. Overall, the current urban environments that we live in aren't great. However, there is a lot to be said for making cities sustainable. Sustainable cities are actually more beneficial in the long run, as seen with their economic and environmental benefits. The economic benefits are added on by Rob Bowen, who's a senior mechanical principal with 30 years of experience in sustainable engineering, and mentions the economic benefits that include the reduced life cycle and operating costs. The County of Sonoma agrees with Rob Bowen and says that these durable materials last a long time and don't need to be replaced or maintained, saving money and resulting in cheaper utility bills. Because these sustainable materials last longer and promote reuse, they're actually more economically efficient because the cost of replacing them or fixing them is completely taken out of the picture. As well, there's an obvious environmental benefits that come with making cities sustainable, such as increased water efficiency, less landfill, and less pollution, as also talked about in Rob Bowen's paper. Finally, they fulfill the ethical concerns of nature. Now, what are these ethical concerns? One ethical concern is that we are part of nature. In Marcus Aurelius' book, The Meditations, he says, "You exist as part of a whole. You will disappear that again in which produces you." And this is actually true, and it brings up an interesting point, because we are actually a part of nature, and by living in cities that promote the destruction of nature, we are ultimately promoting the destruction of ourselves. However, it's not just this that brings up an ethical concern. It also brings up a question of what will happen to future generations if we continue living in the way that we are. In Darren Leo's painting, Melbourne Dystopia, you can see that there's people that the greenhouse gas level is so high that people have to live in hazmat suits in order to survive. Even though this future is grim and dark, it doesn't have to be true, and both of these problems can be solved and our ethical concern can be filled by making cities more sustainable. However, there is an important counterclaim to address, and it is that there's too much economic reliance on the fossil fuels that power our cities. In Kristen Schimp's paper, he talks about how much people's trust in the fossil fuel industry gives it so much power, which would make it really hard to change our cities to become more sustainable. However, Dan Misla, an energy scholar, mentions how there are fuels that are just as green and even more efficient than fossil fuels, but there just needs to be more effort into finding these solutions. Solution and conclusion. A solution, as I said in the beginning, is to draw from ancient wisdom. Julia Watson says, "In our rush towards the future, we often forget about the past." And this is true because there have been many, many solutions that have been there for decades and have been practiced by ancient people, but just haven't been discovered, as seen with the Khasi people in India and the Madan people in Europe. However, a potential implication to consider is that it would take too much time and too much effort to make these things happen, as our current cities are built for efficiency and cost efficiency, and that is something that would need to be considered when making the switch to sustainable while drawing from ancient wisdom. Overall, the current urban environment needs changes and is a long way from being perfect, but the natural next step is to make our cities more sustainable while drawing from ancient wisdom and practices. Thank you. Here's my bibliographies.
Thank you, Dylan. So, Dylan, did your research go in a different direction than you originally expected?
It absolutely did. So my original research question was, my original argument was that urbanization is bad. But then as I started doing more research, I realized that's not really vague, and it's not really realistic either. We can't just get rid of urban cities like that, like at the snap of our fingers. So I decided, if we get rid of urban cities, what would be the natural next step? And that's what I talk about a lot in this, is the theme of the natural next step. And as I started thinking deeper, I took inspiration from Julia Watson's TED Talk with ancient wisdom and making our cities more sustainable. And I thought that the natural next step would be not only using our technology, but drawing from this ancient wisdom to make our cities more sustainable.
Great, thank you. And what additional questions emerged from your research, and why are these questions important?
So an additional question that emerged from my research is, how do we abolish these urban environments? Because obviously they're going to have to go away, but we can't just use a wrecking ball and come through here. So how do we abolish them? And the way I think is we slowly adapt them over time, and what we do is we implicate ancient wisdom into our current environment, and we see that slow change towards sustainable cities.